Well, hello and welcome to this session of uh, strategic generosity presented between Menno Media and our partners at Everence. My name is Mitch Stutzman, and I serve as the Director of Development and Partner Engagement at Menno Media. And we're grateful for our friends at Everence, namely Lana Miller, who's joining us today, who's a stewardship consultant with Everence Financial, who walks alongside folks in their financial planning and charitable planning. And Lana will provide some more words of introduction when she gets started. But our topic that we're going to be discussing today is this idea of strategic generosity, that we feel this call. And in our last session, if you were with us, or if you'd like to go and listen to the recording there, we sort of explored this idea that as followers of Jesus, as people of faith, we have this call to generosity. And so in answering that call, what are the tools and mechanisms that are available to us that help us live into that? And how can we think really intentionally and sometimes strategically about how to harness all of that and live into there? So I'm really grateful that Lana is joining us to help frame this time and guide more of that conversation. So at this point, I'll turn things over to you, Lana. You can say any more words of introduction that would be helpful and carry us into our time together.
Great. Thanks, Mitch. I think for those of you who were with us last time, I'll just say a little bit more about that. We looked together. In fact, I'll maybe put on this PowerPoint so that you can see it. There we go. Adjust you all so I can see you and keep my notes in a place that I can look at them so I can see what I'm doing. But we looked the last time at these kind of stewardship principles, this idea of why do we give, and connected that to the idea that God created everything, that everything belongs to God, that generosity is an act of worship, an offering of ourselves to God. We're invited to manage the resources we've been entrusted with, that stewardship is practiced in community. If we look at Acts in the early church, if we think about giving to those, both in Old Testament and New Testament, as we think about the widow, the orphan, the immigrant, giving to those who are on the margin. And it's also a spiritual practice. It forms us, it changes us. But we don't necessarily give because it's an obligation or it's a strict expectation. It isn't so that we can find some kind of indirect gain by claiming some charitable deduction on our tax returns. Although we're going to talk about those things today. But we're invited to give out of God's provision. We're invited to give, to participate in the community of faith and with one another and God in what God is doing in this world. So I think that as a backdrop for this conversation about charitable giving tools is important as we think about being strategic in our generosity. I will also say in the conversation today, I have invited Mitch to share some stories. Some of you may not know that Mitch used to work for Everence, and he was an expert in charitable giving. So as we go through these different kinds of tools today, I've invited him to share some stories of real people who utilize these tools and the impact that that made in their lives. So we'll be pausing in the midst of this to kind of look at some of those specific things. As we start to look at these different charitable tools, I just want to say at a high level, one of the things as I started my work here is I was not clear that we had, I did not understand how many charitable giving tools and options people had. And while we're not going to go into the specifics of all of them, I think that giving some ideas of what is possible in charitable giving helps to expand our creativity and our imagination. So each of our stories is going to look different. Each of the ways we can or may utilize some of these tools will be different, but understanding at a very high level some of the tools and some of the things that are possible helps us to be creative. So there's three major categories of giving tools: gifts that give now, and these are generally seen as gifts that give to a charity or allow the charity to use the funds immediately. Gifts that give later are typically gifts that are received upon the death of the donor. And gifts that give twice, or gifts that give back, are gifts that can provide income to donors now and help charities after death. So those are the three main categories. And within each of these categories, you'll see there are a variety of tools that we can look at. We won't be looking at all of these tools, but we will look at several in each of the categories. I also just want to note before we dive into the specific tools that there are many more ways that people can give than they realize. We often think that cash, money, is the only way we can give gifts. And what I'm hoping you see throughout these tools is that there are a lot more ways to give. We can give of appreciated assets, stocks, bonds, securities, real estate, retirement assets. We can give gifts of life insurance, other commodities, collectibles, items that have value. There's lots of opportunities and ways that we can give. So let's
Lana, I might also interject at this point too. You're all invited into this space because you're friends of Menno Media. Menno Media is a binational organization covering North America, Canada, and the US. A lot of what Lana will be sharing about is couched within the US tax structure and philanthropic space. A lot of these tools are available to our friends in Canada as well, but they function a little bit differently. And friends in Canada can visit with the folks at Abundance Canada, who is would be the counterpart to Lana in serving Canadian constituents and exploring some of the unique ways that you can harness some of these tools within a Canadian context. So just to set that groundwork to say, this is, Lana will be talking about tools from a uniquely United States perspective, but Canada has its own set of unique circumstances that would be great to explore too. But anyway, go ahead.
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks for that clarification, because I know that there may be some folks looking at this from a Canadian perspective, and this doesn't always make the same sense there. So let's look at one of these gifts that give now. Again, the gifts that give now are those kinds of things that charities can use immediately. So one of those kinds of tools is a donor advised fund, or DAF or DAF. We have this visual of a bucket here as a way to think about this as kind of a charitable bucket or a charitable checking account. So you place assets in that bucket and then send funds to your favorite charities as the needs arise. The donor advised fund is an account that's, Everence Foundation is a sponsor of that kind of account. You would find a donor advised fund at other places as well. So the donors contribute cash or other assets that have a fair market value. Again, things like real estate, securities, mutual fund shares, to the Everence Foundation. And then depending on the asset, there's a potential for an income tax deduction, ability to avoid taxable gains tax and things like that. And you also receive immediate tax deductions, but you don't need to make distributions from this fund at the very same time or the same year that you receive those deductions. You can make them at a later date. This is a tool that helps donors sometimes level out their giving over the years. Maybe they have higher income years and they put some money into this fund, and maybe later they have lower income years. And so they're able to give in the same or similar kinds of amounts over an extended period of time. It's also a great tool for families to use to work together um, on charitable projects, or a way to model values and teaching younger family members how to give. As I noted just here a little bit, um, donor advised funds, there's some usual assets that you could utilize for these funds, like cash, securities, real estate, farm commodities, but there's also some unusual assets that had been gifted. Really, this is where we get into the creativity. Anything that you have that could create cash value could be utilized and given in a charitable kind of way. Mitch, do you have some stories of charitable, or I mean, sorry, donor advised funds and people who have used donor advised funds?
Yeah. Well, one thing that I might add from the perspective of a charity like Menno Media, one of the values that it adds for us when a donor chooses to give through a donor advised fund to one of our organizations, particularly when you start thinking about these special assets, your local congregation or a Menno Media, for example, we're not really set up to receive gifts of emus all the time. We're not practiced in doing that. We're not practiced in taking in gifts of soybeans. We're not practiced in taking in gifts of mutual funds, and we don't have the processes that we're revisiting every day. It's really helpful for folks like us when folks say, you know, I want to be really strategic in my giving, and there are some assets that are different than cash that I'd like to make a charitable gift. Working through an Everence, for example, that administers a donor advised fund structure can be really meaningful. So from the Menno Media perspective, like we have a donor, for example, that wanted to make a donation to our Anabaptism at 500 initiative. And he said, those dollars will be coming through my donor advised fund. And I asked, well, what did you use to fund that donor advised fund? And he said, well, I made a commitment 20 years ago when I started sheep farming that all of the females I would keep and all of the males would go to God. So when we lamb in the spring, and if they're female, I take one path, and when they're male, we send them on a different path, and we sell them we gift them into our donor advised fund, and Everence sells them on our behalf and puts the proceeds into our donor advised fund. And then I'm able to give generously to my faith community, to my favorite relief organization, to Menno Media, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one example of how it's had a positive impact for Menno Media and on the life of this donor, to where he can take this unique asset, lambs, and say, I'm going to turn this into a mechanism for generosity, and send that along. When I was working for Everence, I worked with a particular donor that had a large portfolio of rental properties that he would then each year he was he was getting to a point where he would like to retire from being a landlord, and he slowly, one at a time, started gifting properties in his portfolio into his donor advised fund. So he would gift a house to the Everence Foundation. Everence would then take in that asset, sell it on his behalf, and then the proceeds of that sale would be deposited into an account that he had control over the distribution of. So then he used those dollars, the proceeds from that sale, to benefit all of the causes and organizations that he wished to benefit. A few things also that he really liked about it that I'll add to Lana's description of some of the benefits is that sometimes he preferred to give anonymously. And a donor advised fund is a really effective tool for that, to where he could send a distribution and give us instruction, us, I'm saying at Everence. I'm sorry, now I'm confusing my roles, but he would give Everence the instruction, please don't connect my name to it. And believe it or not, charities will still receive funds even if they're anonymous. So those charities would then receive a check. I would have opportunity to, when I was at Everence, to deliver a check to a charity. and say, this is on behalf of one of our donors. And it protects anonymity in that way. And for some, that's really important. And so it's a really helpful tool to take in special assets, to also be really intentional in that the Everence structure, at least, you're able to schedule distributions if you like, to say, every quarter, please send this amount to Menno Media or this amount to my local congregation, or fill in the blank of your favorite cause organization. Provides a lot of flexibility in what it can take in, and also a lot of flexibility in how to distribute it, providing a lot of value to the donors that use that structure.
So let me go to the next one. And this one is a fun one. I at least think it's fun. Qualified charitable distributions from an IRA. So this is another tool for those who are at least age 70 and a half, who might be able to take a distribution from their IRA, or 72 who are having required minimum distributions. So if you have a required distribution from your IRA, you're permitted to roll over that distribution directly to a charitable organization from your IRA without being taxed on it. So it's not added or counted as part of your adjusted gross income, and consequently, you do not pay taxes for this. Again, distributions have to be made directly from the IRA. You can't withdraw the money and then give it to the charitable organization. It needs to go directly from your IRA, paid to the public charity, and Everence is able to help you set up those kinds of distributions. You also don't have to distribute all of your required minimum distribution. So if you want to receive part of it for your own income and for your own use, but give another part to a charity, you're able to do that as well. Mitch, a story?
There's a particular donor to Menno Media who, when I was visiting with him, said, I'm going to be sending you a QCD, qualified charitable distribution. I'm going to be sending a QCD from my IRA to satisfy this gift that I want to make to you. And I was asking him more about that gift strategy and how often he does that, and is that how he does all of his giving? And he confirmed, yeah, that's how I do all of my charitable giving. Ever since I have been eligible to do so, I have accessed my IRA for charitable purposes. And then in addition to saying that, he shared with me, because of this really advantageous taxation model and how this has served him really well, since he has been eligible to gift out of his IRA, which has now been approximately 15 years, he has not paid income tax at all since he's been eligible to do this. So he doesn't have a tax bill ever, which he went on to say that occasionally he will get somebody that will call him from the IRS, or every couple of years, saying something is, they flag him as a concern, saying that he hasn't paid tax in a while and all of those things. And he said, what a powerful witness that I have an opportunity to sit with somebody from the IRS that asks me, how are you able to give away so much money and not pay any taxes? And so he has been a firm believer in this structure ever since he's been eligible to do it, and does all of his charitable giving to the various causes and organizations that he wishes to support through his IRA and qualified charitable distributions. I will highlight something on Lana's list there that sometimes gets overlooked, and that is that while, yes, if you are 72 and you have a required minimum distribution, this qualified charitable distribution can certainly satisfy your RMD. However, you'll see that it says up to $100,000 per year. So some people have very large IRAs, and so you're not limited to your required minimum distribution. You could say, I'd like to make a big impact on my favorite charity, and I want to send $100,000 out of my IRA, just because your RMD might be, you know, a more modest amount, you can send up to $100,000 without penalty out of that structure. The one piece that does come up in questioning this a lot is that a QCD cannot be put into a donor advised fund. There is a slightly different mechanism that's available through Everence that could receive those. But a lot of people who have an existing donor advised fund who wish to put their QCD in there, that is not an eligible gift. But there are some other nuances. And if you have questions about that, I'm sure Lana can answer those or connect you with somebody else that can. But that's a little nuance that comes up often. You'll need to unmute yourself, Lana.
I muted because I thought, oh, here we go. Let's shift to gifts that help later. So we just were doing gifts that help now. Let's do gifts that help later. So when we think about these kinds of gifts, we're looking at end of life gifts, typically, charitable bequests and other kinds of planned giving tools. So to start this conversation on thinking about charitable bequests, maybe, I don't remember if I said this the last time or not, but let's just think, while living, what do you think is the percentage of people in the US who engage in charitable giving? The number of households that engage in charitable giving during their lifetime. Do you have a guess on the percentage? And you can unmute to give your guess. Or put it in the chat, either way. Any guesses? What percentage of people do you think in the US give, the percentage of households that give during their lifetime? Do you see that in the chat there, Mitch? Somebody put something. What did they put?
Heidi Regier Kreider from Western District Mennonite Conference guessed 45%, and Alma Unruh put in 10%. Andrew's guess is at 80%.
Okay, so as of 2018, the percentage I have is that 49.6% of US households were giving. This actual percentage is down from 2000. In 2000, it was 66.2%. So almost 17 percentage points down. So, but about 49.6% of people are giving, or households are giving during their lifetime. Now, what do you think is the percentage of people in the US who make provisions for charitable gifts at their death? Charitable planned gifts at their death. What do you think is the percentage? If 49.6% of households are giving during their lifetime, at their death, what percentage do you think people are giving?
I'll give people a hint that it's not the same number.
No, it's not the same. It's not
Heidi
the same.
guessed 10%.
Okay.
Denton says 5%.
Okay. You would
Alma also guessed 10.
You would be closer, Denton. Fewer than 6% of Americans include a charitable bequest in their will or trust. But it's fascinating, I think, that 1 in 3 say they would consider doing so if asked. I find that fascinating, that 1 in 3 say they would consider doing so if they were asked. I also think it's fascinating that those numbers are so different. If almost 50% are giving during their life, why is it that fewer than 6% are giving at death? And I think something for you to consider and explore, even as you're looking at your own life and even preparing for end of life. It's one of the things that we do at Everence is do an end of life kind of planning and curriculum. In fact, I'm right now in the middle of doing one with a group from Virginia, from folks here in Virginia, looking at end of life planning, but helping people to be consider what are my values and how do I want those values to speak even at my death. So creating a will or a trust is an important act, I think, of being intentional with our stewardship. And it's a way we can provide for our loved ones and also a way of making a difference to the charities that we care most about. Here we go. So how do we do that? I think this is one of the things, if 1 in 3 say, I would be interested in doing so if somebody asked me to, I think it would be important to kind of look at, how could we start to think about these kinds of things? And I think the last time we started thinking in some ways about why we give, but I think one of the reasons we give is because of legacy. And thinking about what is the legacy we want to leave? What are the things that we value most and we want to care about, even at our death or after we are no longer here? But often, as we think about what we're going to gift, we also consider what we want to leave to our loved ones, to our heirs. And so asking some of the questions like, well, what is enough? What do my children or heirs actually need? And what is it that I might leave to other organizations that I value or care about the work that they're doing in this world? So these idea of what is important to me, what communicates my values, and considering what you might make your largest gift to are important kinds of things. Many people also ask, as they're thinking about this question of what to leave to my heirs, how big should my charitable bequest be, and how much should I leave to those who I love? When children are younger, parents often perhaps designate a percentage or a tithe, maybe like 10%, to go to a charitable bequest, to charitable organizations. And as children grow up, parents often may want to think about how they increase that percentage, or the idea of adopting charity as a child. So for example, I have 2 children. And if I adopted charity as a child, that would become my 3rd child. And then my estate would be divided in 3 instead of 2. 2/3 of my estate going to my children and 1/3 of my estate going to the charities of my choice. That's an option to consider as we think about what we might leave in a bequest or a will. It's fascinating for me to think that this is a fairly easy option. And often this is one of the first kinds of planned gifts a donor can commit to. This kind of bequest plan helps to witness to our faith after our passing and also can help to reduce estate, inheritance taxes. And since charitable bequests are deductible from our estate, it also can minimize perhaps some of the other taxes those who were leaving other things to may need to make. If you don't have any children, this is also a great option for you to be able to consider and to think about to who and what you may want to leave your estate to. It's fairly simple. It's a gift to a church or a charity that is a portion of your estate at death, and it's bestowed through your will, a trust, or a beneficiary designation. One of the things that I'll share here in just a minute is that as you assign a portion of your assets to be left in your will, we often encourage you to assign that to Everence Foundation for some simplicity kinds of purposes. When assigned a portion, whatever portion you would like of your estate to Everence Foundation, we then have you fill out a charitable recommendation form, and I'm going to show you that form, which indicates which charities or causes you would like to support with your bequest. And then upon your death, the executor simply transfers the designated portion of your estate to the Everence Foundation, and we distribute to the charities that you've recommended, no matter how many charities that is. So it simplifies the work of the executor because they only need to send one check, no matter how many charities you choose to support. Let me just share a little bit about this form so that you can see what this form looks like. for a bequest, or if you have a balance even in your donor advised fund, so we were talking about that earlier, if you have something left in that donor advised fund, or if you've named Everence Foundation in your will, you would fill out this form when you open the account. And then upon your death, we distribute the funds according to your wishes. So you can see on this sheet, you can name organizations, and you can change what those organizations might be at any time. You can also give percentages of the amount that you would like each of the charities to receive, and you can adjust those percentages at any time. And this form is really handy because you can do that at any time without cost, which is really helpful, because if you name the charity in your will or your trust, you have to pay an attorney fees to make those kinds of changes. And at Everence, with this recommendation form, you can make those changes as many times as you want and without cost. I want to just say a little bit about this one before I give you, Mitch, a chance to tell a story. This is very similar to the conversation on qualified charitable distributions. Part of the reason making a distribution from a qualified charitable distribution from an IRA is so helpful is because it can avoid those kinds of taxes that come with those distributions. The same as if you gift an IRA upon your death. So giving it to a charity doesn't have to pay traditional taxes from a traditional IRA, as heirs would be responsible to pay taxes in this kind of way. And so just helpful to know, if you haven't had this kind of conversation with those who are helping you with finances, to consider or to think about gifting from your IRA, and thinking about perhaps if you would want to leave then other funds to your heirs, that you would do that out of other places. Again, you don't have to gift the entire IRA, but a portion of that will also help to reduce some of the tax implications. Mitch, some stories.
Yeah, I'll just say that I think it's great to work with somebody like an Everence who can look at your entire financial picture and who is also attentive to your charitable desires, because they can help you understand what Lana was talking about. This is a good asset to give to charity. This would be a good asset for your heirs to receive, or they can help you walk through that in a really meaningful way. The other piece that I'll add to say as a way of attending to your charitable desires while also demonstrating care for your heirs and for the charitable causes that you're interested in, utilizing like an Everence to help with this is a great gift to those that you leave behind. I reflect on my time when I was working at Everence that on multiple occasions, we received a gift of real estate out of an estate. So instead of the family having to worry about marketing and selling and divvying out and paying tax and things, we received the gift of property. Everence markets it, Everence sells it, Everence then puts all of that into the one pot and then divvies it out as many ways as you'd like. And Everence is really practiced in doing that in a way that perhaps your heirs or your favorite cause or organization might not be as practiced. And so it's a great gift to go through somebody who's practiced like that. In regards to how many different places you can send stuff out to, reflecting back on my time when I was working at Everence, one of the clients that I had that when she passed away and we distributed her charitable her charitable dollars, we got out a charitable gift recommendation form that had 36 charities listed on it in various percentages. It was a great gift to the executor who did not have to divvy it out to 36 charities, but also a great privilege for those at Everence who get to say, look at the positive impact on all of these places. And what a powerful witness that is. So a Menno Media specific story that just happened recently was I was sitting down with one of our longtime donors and had presented this idea of remembering Menno Media through some sort of gift at the end of his life. And he said, you know, I think I can do that. And I got a phone call then a couple weeks later that said, I've gone and met with my financial advisor, and I've included you as a beneficiary on my IRA. So you will receive a portion of my IRA upon my death, which is a great blessing for us, not only in the fact that we know that there will be dollars coming later. That's nice for a nonprofit to know about those things, but also as a way for us to maintain relationship and to go deeper together in that journey and to talk more about that. It's a great gift for the charities that you know about or that you are remembering in such a way to also engage with them and say, this is a piece that I'm doing, or this is a piece that I want you to know about and why I'm using this mechanism. So those are a few things that I would add to that piece.
Thank you. Well, let's get to the third section of this conversation, gifts that give twice. I think these are really creative and something fun to talk about. So for people who have charitable intent, they want funds to eventually be given away to charity, but perhaps have or want to make sure they have financial security within their lifetime. These are really helpful tools. So they're tools that give to the donor while they're alive and then are turned over to the charity upon their death. So let me give a little bit more explanation. One of these tools, there's two, a charitable gift annuity is the first and a charitable remainder unitrust is the second. A charitable gift annuity, let's talk about this first. How this works. A charitable gift annuity is funded with a gift of cash, stocks, bonds, securities to Everence Foundation. And I would add, one of the really, really fun things that's happening now is you can actually also fund a charitable gift annuity out of an IRA. So if you want some of those details, I can tell you about that too. So after you fund the gift annuity, in return, you get payments at a fixed rate for the rest of your life. And then upon your death or the death of the last named income beneficiary, the rest of the gift annuity is distributed to the charities that you have specified. So you get an immediate tax deduction for a portion of the gift. And then there may be future tax like income tax free payments that you might receive later on as you go. So it also has some tax benefits. Just to show you, because I think it's kind of a fun thing to see. And these are taken from January 1 of 2023. The annuity rates, when I said that there was a fixed rate for life at age 70, they're all based on your age. So at age 70, you would be receiving a rate of 5.9%. And then you can kind of see the percentages likewise. And then if you have or name 2 lives on the gift annuity, again, it's according to your ages, you would then see what those rates are. They're really good rates right now. And so that's part of the reason I wanted to show that to you as something to continue to think about. So Mitch, tell us a story.
I'll share 2 stories. One from about 10 years ago when I was an Everence employee, and I started working with these folks that were looking to secure some retirement income and had deep charitable intent. And we're looking at something like a charitable gift annuity to say, well, we can secure some income for ourselves and also set up this plan that gifts dollars to our favorite charities down the road. So it was a really good fit for them. And they started, it's a contractual agreement, and Lana might talk more about that in the next section, which means that you don't add to it, but you just create new contracts whenever you want to create more income from your gift annuity structure. And so they funded a gift annuity And then a year later, they came back and said, this is working really well. We're going to fund another one. And then they said, that's working really well. We want to fund another one. And then I started referring to them very lovingly as my serial annuitants, that it seemed that every year or every review cycle about when I would send them a review letter and say, hey, it's time to check in about how these are working for you. They'd say, it's working great, and we want to fund another one. And so by the time that I had left working at Everence, they had 13 charitable gift annuities that were giving them a steady stream of fixed income for them in their retirement, with the knowledge that they're going to support the charities that they are passionate about upon their death. The other piece that I was just going to share was that Lana mentioned assets that are good for charitable gift annuity. And I've been in conversation with folks that are exploring, well, as a bit of context, I live in central Kansas. And so the agriculture community is very prevalent here. And so farm commodities are another thing that can be used to fund charitable gift annuity. Basically, liquid assets, so to speak, are good at funding this structure. And particular person who longtime supporter and wants to continue doing that, but also looking ahead at retirement and saying, I think I want to secure some fixed income that will be regular and steady for me, and do that through a gift of farm commodities. One nuance that we won't spend a lot of time on here, but you can visit with Lana about later, is that there are deferred options to where you say, you know, I don't need the income today because I'm 55 and working and all those things, but I'm going to retire in 10, 12 years. So I'd like to set a date where my income will turn on. And so you can do a deferred option too. And there's all sorts of nuance there. And depending on the asset and the dollars and your age and all of that, Lana can run very specific illustrations for folks if there are specific questions. But that's another little creative, strategic solution for you in all of this.
So let's talk about the last tool that we're going to talk about today. And it falls under this gifts that give twice. It's a charitable remainder unitrust, often referred to as a CRUT. I didn't say the minimum amount of gift annuity, and that would be $10,000 to open a gift annuity. For a CRUT, the minimum amount to establish this is $100,000. And so you're going to start to see a few differences between these two tools. A charitable remainder unitrust through Everence Foundation is a way, again, what Mitch was just talking about, to utilize these appreciated assets. A really helpful way to utilize appreciated assets, real estate, securities, and then transferring those into cash without losing much of your gain to taxes. So often we have capital gains tax on some things. And if we can utilize these kinds of tools, we can kind of not lose or be taxed on that gain in the same kind of way. So the catch to this is pretty simple. Before you cannot sell your asset on your own, you have to make sure you arrange the sale of your security or real estate through Everence. So you make a gift of the asset to Everence Foundation. And just like when you were talking in the bequest about gifting real estate, you do not have to gift all of it to Everence Foundation. It can be simply a percentage. It doesn't have to be the entire amount. So you gift the asset to Everence. The foundation finds a buyer for your gift and then converts that to cash. And then we provide you with variable income from your gift for the rest of your life. So you can even have your income from the trust divided among more than one person. And you can also direct the distribution of the trust principal to as many charities as you like. So what I said is it gives you income for life based upon an agreed upon rate. So unlike a charitable gift annuity that's based on your age and the amount and when you're planning to take that out, this is based on an agreed upon rate, a minimum of 5%. So when you gift the asset, you receive an immediate tax deduction. You can bypass capital gains depending on how much your asset has appreciated in value, and you can minimize some estate taxes if those are applicable to you as well. A story, Mitch?
Lana mentioned that there's an agreed upon percentage. I should say very explicitly, a CRUT is a legal document drafted by an attorney. So you go and visit an attorney, they draft this new bucket that will be the entity that holds those things. In the case of what we're talking about today, then Everence Foundation serves as the trustee of that trust and manages all of that within there. And the required percentages within the legal parameters within North America right now say it needs to be between a 5% and a 50% payout. And when I've explored this before, this is really attractive for folks that want to gift real estate, or I've talked with a lot of farmers that they tend to have an operating sort of ethos around what their income off of their farm is. And they say, well, my farm income, once everything's said and done, and averages out to about a 2% return. And so then when I present something like this and say, well, you know, there's a way if you're looking to retire from the farming operation and nobody wants to like just take over and all of that and you want to sell, why not consider a gift instead? And you'd get 5% return. And they say, what, I get this return off of there every year? It's like, yeah, you maintain this income stream until the agreed upon term of years, and then or the death of the income beneficiaries, and then charity gets the remainder. And so in some cases, it has increased the income for some folks that have gifted an asset in this way. I do want to say, too, that throughout this time, Lana's been talking about you make this gift to Everence Foundation, and then Everence Foundation does this and this and this. And you were invited into this space by Menno Media and your friends of Menno Media. And if you say, well, I want my gift to go to Menno Media, I don't want my gift to go to Everence Foundation, I'm here to tell you that our friends at Everence are doing a great service for organizations like Menno Media, like the local church, like regional conferences, like fill in the blank of your favorite cause or organization, that utilizing an Everence Foundation really increases the amount of strategy that you get to bring to your gift planning, increases the amount that you're able to give to all of the causes and organizations that you want to give to. And I can just voice that from my perspective, I am very grateful for folks that choose to work with an Everence and then choose to remember Menno Media through one of these various gifting tools. So if that has been a question looming in anybody's mind, I want to just make it very clear in this space. So I don't know if that was helpful or not, Lana, but there we go.
So we've talked about several different things today, and maybe you have some remaining questions. Maybe you have questions about something we didn't talk about. Always, we're happy to help at Everence. I think we've had over 50 years of experience in kind of working at this thing and these things, and happy to assist where people are at. But if you're thinking, I'm a little overwhelmed by the amount of information I've received today, where should I go next? Let me just give you a few ideas. I would encourage you to consider how your faith and values, your beliefs, shape the way that you want to make an impact. And we talked about this the last time. but consider how you want to make an impact. We can't do everything, but what are the things you're most passionate about and you feel that God is inviting you to participate in? If you haven't already, I would invite you to complete a will or ensure that your will is updated. Make sure you know who is listed as beneficiaries to receive retirement funds or life insurance when you pass away. So make sure your beneficiary designations are updated, that they're in order, and that you can also name a charity on some of these designations. And you may want to talk with a financial consultant about those kinds of things. Organize your financial documents. Make sure things are in order. If you come by an Everence office or contact somebody from Everence, we can send you a little financial affairs directory so that you can make sure that these things are in a place where others can access them. And I would invite you to talk to your family about your intentions. What is it that you want to do, and what do you care about the most? Why do you give to the organizations that you give to? We began the conversation with this slide. And I said that we don't give particularly because we feel obliged or there's a strict expectation. We don't necessarily give because there's some sort of indirect claim to a tax deduction, although we talked about some of those things that can happen, but we give out of response to God's provision. We give out of being part of a community of faith where we want to participate in what God is doing in the world, and we want to join one another in this kind of redemptive work. So, blessings, and I invite you to consider what that looks like for you in your life as you think about charitable giving and the difference that you can make. And I hope that some of these tools were helpful in considering that. And I would
Lana,
just invite
if there are more questions about some of the specific tools, can you give your contact information in this space? You all have my contact information, but you'll see Lana's contact on the screen now as well. But sorry, Lana, you can now conclude in the way you wanted.
And I would just say if there are more questions, we can even stop the recording and have a few more informal conversation at this point as well, because we've kind of breezed through all of these things without pausing too much for your input.
So as we transition now into our Q&A, if you need to leave this space, that is fine. I thank you for your involvement today and for showing up and being friends of Menno Media and friends of Everence in this great endeavor. So thank you for your participation today.